Before I get started, I do want to say I wrote this list review back in like August, but updated ones will be coming. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly list updates, where I tell y'all about the 10 albums I've listened to since the last update, which was a little bit longer than a week ago, but hey, at least I didn't give my beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy a 6. Per usual, I'll be taking the time to highlight independent artists, and I highly encourage you to follow them. They will be tagged in the description, or their socials will show up on my face somewhere. So, without further ado, Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. Yes, I did. All 6 hours of it, in one sitting, taking meticulous notes. I will be talking about this. It may be a while, but we will talk about this album in full in a very interesting way. Camp Cunt by Hoodie Hilltop. Shout out to the homie Hoodie for dropping a solid, short, and sweet psych trap follow-up to their amazing E-Punk era albums from earlier in this year. It's definitely not the direction I expected them to go, but they did a really good job stepping into this new lane for them. Of course, be sure to drop a follow for them below, or here-ish, especially if you're into horror movies. They've been doing a lot of that content lately.
Who the fuck is Nitch Bigger?
By Nitch Bigger. So, a while ago, this is like months ago now, a TikTok was floating around asking precisely this question after her name appeared on a worst female rappers list, and went kind of viral, which I imagine prompted the release of this album. Despite being on a list of the worst rappers, honestly, I had a good time with this album. Her delivery is kind of like a Young Thug and Playboi Carti with a little bit of Blade in there, and it honestly made for a good 20-minute listen. Be sure, of course, to drop a follow for her below, or, it's somewhere. Deluxe, Deluxe, Deluxe by Robin's Ghost. This was a pretty solid and imaginative rap album featuring solid production and features from artists I've talked about before on here, like It's Disbelief and Mondo the Alien. I'm at the point where I gotta have to do this. I have a song out with Mondo, made music before. It's called AMAB. You might have heard of it. Go stream it in your dreams. The electronic beats and delivery kind of remind me in parts of Baby Keem. This album was a good time. Be sure to drop them a follow below. We're here to see what they got coming next. How Do You Sleep at Night by Tizo Touchdown. Whoo! Okay. So this was a big release, and I'm going to comment on it far too late this time. I think we found Rap's Weezer. I'll be honest, I really wanted to like this more, but the more immature moments on the album wore the experience down quickly for me. I'll probably give it more listens in the future, but first impressions were pretty okay, and I think that if you are younger, I think you'll really like this album and resonate with it a lot more. Guts by Olivia Rodrigo. This was definitely an improvement to her debut Sour, but in a kind of weird way. I thought that Sour was good, and where I thought the bangers and ballads on Sour all ranged between great to okay, I could give less of a shit about the ballads on Guts, with the exception of Teenage Dream. That one's a good one. But the bangers? The fucking bangers? Oh, nah. That's a wrap. This album slaps. Hell Hath No Fury? Clips. Despite being very familiar with classic songs like Mr. Me Too and We Got It For Cheap, and even owning the album on vinyl, it's sitting literally right behind me, I have never actually listened to this album all the way through, at least until I was going to say today, but it's been like 3 months. This is honestly the most I have liked Pharrell's production. I honestly even like it even more than his work in NERD, and hearing a young Pusha T and No Malice go back and forth on some of the best beats of the 2000s? Woo! God, if you're a newer Pusha T fan or someone who doesn't get why he and his brother are so legendary in hip-hop, give this a listen. Magic 3 by Nas. The final album in the legendary King's Disease and Magic run throughout the 2020s so far, which I think as a whole has reminded the entire rap world that Nas is one of the greatest to ever do it, still out in rap making music. This closing project is a fitting send-off to this late-stage gem in Nas's career. While this is the most low-key of any of his Hit Boy collabs, this is still a lyrical standout, and I personally appreciate the references and respect put on new rappers out right now. As much as I'd love to keep hearing more from Nas in this bright spot of his career, I think he's more than entitled for a break, especially with all the great music he's given us. Project X by Ken Carson. I'll keep it a buck. I only listened to this because I needed something to listen to in the background while I was writing that long-ass Dark Twisted Fantasy dive. I mean, there isn't really too much to say. Honestly, Ken Carson's got more going for him than Destroyed Lonely, at least. And he does have better beat selection and the good sense to not make a 90-minute fucking project. It's not the worst, but there is still a massive skill gap between Carti and his offspring at this point. Dookie by Green Day. A pop-punk classic I have been meaning to listen to for a while now, and while it was an enjoyable listen, I didn't actually find anything particularly remarkable about the tracklist as a whole, other than it being a bunch of solid pop-punk tunes. Arguably, that's kind of all it needs to be, but for such an important record, I was expecting something with a little more fanfare. And that is it for this week. I'll be back to posting more often now that I've got some actual time to work on these videos. I've been traveling a bit and preparing for a new Irrational Direction project that could be coming out in the next few months or so, but I'll talk a little more about that later, and I'll see y'all for the next review. Pieces.